All right. Welcome. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez. And today my guests are Dr. Shante Bassett, who is a counselor, Jennifer Mitchell Mayer, another counselor, and Frank Latera Bellino. Frank is the director of LaGuardia's Wellness Center, and they're all here from the center. They're busy running programming for Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're going to be talking about all the special programming and opportunities for LaGuardia students, staff, and faculty. But before we begin, and you have to unmute yourself there, Frank. But I let you pick the music. Since you are the guest, so you want to, yeah. And you said you wanted something edgier. So did you? What? You want to talk about that first piece we played?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just this idea of connecting with students, right?
Right.
Our motto is meeting students where they are. And if we were going to play the Beatles, which I think is great, but I don't know if students are able to connect with the Beatles as they would a
I
Truck
think it
Called
was like I think I had suggested James Taylor,
You did.
but
We
anyhow,
we we
same
huddled to
same difference.
yeah, we huddled together and we said, I don't know if that's going to work for this go around.
That's perfectly legitimate. Uh, but anyhow, one of the things also we had to clear up is that both Dr. Bassett and Jennifer have been on my show before, and I'm just I don't know what it is, but I'm getting old. So if I don't, and one of the reasons I would like to teach face to face is I don't have a physical experience with people. I don't this the virtual is it doesn't quite get it for me. But so apologies that I had to check in and didn't remember. You'd like to both say hi, say hello. Dr. Bassett, did you want to say hello or?
Okay, thank you for calling on me because there's always that awkward silence, like who's going on first? What's on second? Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Shante Bassett. I'm a psychologist and actually an adjunct professor, and I work in the Wellness Center with these wonderful colleagues of mine. I'm glad to be back.
Jennifer?
Hi, Hugo. It's nice to be back on your show and good to see everybody. I'm Jennifer Mitchell Mayer. I'm a counselor and the outreach coordinator at the Wellness Center.
Jennifer, the ribbon you're wearing, do you want to tell me about it?
Yes, so you might be seeing a lot of these green ribbons on campus. We delivered over 400 to faculty, staff, and students across the campus. This is the official ribbon of Mental Health Awareness Month. So all month long, we've been going really hard this month to talk about mental health and why it's so important that we have that space to talk about it. So these ribbons are a reminder for all of us to be honoring and talking about mental health this month.
Right, and I'm not playing dumb. I actually am because you delivered. First, you delivered it to the wrong Fernandez. You delivered it to Ariane Fernandez, but I haven't looked in my bag yet. I was saying, like, what's in that bag? Because I see all these papers coming out of it, but I haven't. So it's obvious that Mr. Hugo has not looked in his bag yet. But when I get to school tomorrow, I'll put it on. And I won't take it off till the month is over. How's that? But I talked about in the format of the show. Typically, what we do, particularly with new guests, is we have them tell us a little bit about themselves, their backgrounds, their studies, and their life before LaGuardia. And so Frank, since you're new to the show, why don't you start?
Yeah. I've been with LaGuardia. It was 8 years. I celebrated in February. And I've been the director of LaGuardia's Wellness Center, of course. And prior to LaGuardia, I had 10 years at a private college called St. Joseph's over in Brooklyn. And I was the director of counseling, health services, and disability services on our Brooklyn campus and Long Island campus. So I spent 10 years there, and then I made the decision to depart. And I found myself within CUNY, which is a whole different world, different experience. But here I am. And when I started back in 2015, as you can imagine, it was a much different world, pre-pandemic. But there wasn't, it was a different iteration of the Wellness Center. So the focus was a bit different. So I came in from the ground and really built the center along with my colleagues. And it was, again, a much different experience back then where just the concerns were different. Um, our students were still very much in need of support and care, but things have changed significantly, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I'd say within 3 years of being at LaGuardia, the team and I built what's now the Wellness Center. And again, at the time, we were working sort of bare bones. Students didn't know about our services. Faculty and staff were yearning for that type of support. And we really took a lot of time to establish relationships with faculty and staff, did a lot of outreach in the beginning. We tried to, as much as possible, connect with students. And again, as I mentioned earlier, really thinking about how we can meet students where they are instead of assuming that they're just going to show up to the Wellness Center. So we did a lot of outreach, a lot of connecting, a lot of tabling, planning a lot of different events, and really partnering with faculty in particular, getting into the classrooms. And I think that was the key to really building up to where we are today. Now we're in a place, and let me know if I'm jumping ahead. But
Yeah,
we
you're
are
already on the second quarter, but that's okay. I'm used to it by now.
Yeah, I mean, we're busy. I'll just say that we're very busy. We're trying to accommodate every student that needs support, realizing that students are in a different place again post-pandemic.
Right. What is your actual degrees in, or what were your studies?
Yeah, so my background is in mental health. I have a license in mental health counseling. I'm a yoga teacher, so I really value the importance of mental health, of course, and also just overall self-care and wellness.
All right. Are you guys involved at all with Dr. Inukunda's uh, stressless yoga, or whatever he calls it, stressless yoga or something? Is that part of your package?
Yeah, that's under the umbrella of our alternative wellness classes. We partner with different faculty, different staff to present self-care activities like yoga, Tai Chi, meditation, and so forth.
Okay. So again, Jennifer and Dr. Bassett have both been on the show before, but anything else you'd like to tell? Maybe somebody from the audience is checking in for the first time, so I don't know if you wanted to do a quick synopsis, especially if anything you think people would like to hear about you before we move into the things you guys do here at the college. I'll start.
You know,
Jennifer.
yeah.
I'll see. So I'll pick Jennifer this time. By the way, I don't deal with that issue. Whenever the mic becomes open, I tend to grab it. So, but anyhow, I'm sure if you ask around, you'll say, "Oh yeah, I know that guy." So Jennifer, did you want to go first? Anything you wanted to check in about yourself that you wanted to share again?
Yeah, sure. So I am a licensed clinical social worker. I came on to the Wellness Center in January of 2021, sort of right in the height of the pandemic. And it's been really amazing. So over the last couple of years, just getting to work with all of my incredible colleagues and the students, like it's been just like a fantastic experience. And before that, so I've been in the field doing a lot of different areas. Right before this, I was doing a lot of like policy level work. I've been working for a few years leading Mayor de Blasio's community schools initiative. So I was doing a lot of like policy level work for students who were homeless and temporary housing, and sort of working a lot with all the different like city agencies in coordinating sort of a systemic response across the city for students who have special needs and mental health. And then after that, I was doing some work in the district attorney's office right before I came to LaGuardia. So it's been really fantastic.
Okay. Dr. Bassett?
So I've been working for CUNY for a while, since the fall of 2013. I did my internship at Brooklyn College in their counseling center, which is the personal counseling, which is the equivalent of the wellness center here. And I've been working clinically for about 18 years. Nobody else said numbers, so maybe I should steer clear of numbers too. But I've been working in a variety of settings. I've worked in inpatient psychiatric hospital, residential care, and most recently, before my tenure in CUNY in higher ed, I was actually working in a correctional setting. So I've worked as a mental health professional at Rikers Island and also did some work during my undergrad as an intern in a maximum security facility for prisoners who were diagnosed with mental illness. So I have an extensive correctional past, but higher ed is where I am and what I've really come to enjoy.
Well, if you want to smash them together, I work with a group called Higher Ed in the Prisons, and which is a CUNY-wide committee through the University Faculty Senate. And there are a few folks, you probably know them at the college here, who are involved with that, like Dr. Joni Schwartz-Cheney and Dr. Cheney, Dr. Corey Feldman from social science. So they're all on that
Absolutely.
committee. And if you ever want to come on a Friday afternoon at 4 and listen to all the things
Sounds
we're doing,
good. We'll be in
I
touch.
can invite you. When you started talking, Frank, I started remembering the hit, because I've been here for 30 years, but not really ascension being as far as what was happening in the rest of the college. I was kind of very focused for the first 10 years on the photography program and being an adjunct. And when I became full time, that changed. And there was a transition. In the old days, we used to have faculty counselors who work with people, both advising and counseling them. Then we went through this period. I forgot his name, Mitch. Maybe he was here when you were here just before he left. Who, as we lost counselors and that program died, co-op. I can't remember if it was co-op or counseling. The program finally died. The department. That there was this transitionary period where we called it the Student Success Center, and it wasn't very successful. And then it became the Wellness Center, and from what I can tell, things are going well. So what did you do different when you took over? How did you change what was going on with mental health services for students at the
Yeah.
college?
Yeah. So this is 2015 when I started at LaGuardia, and I
Right.
remember the vice president at the time basically said, "Hey, you're starting from the bottom up, and it's going to be really important to connect with the community sooner than later." So that was my first charge when I started. So in addition to just getting to know a team and creating a bonding with the team, I really tried to hone down on what was most important. And again, the vice president wanted me to connect with the community, and so that's what we did. A lot of outreach, as I mentioned earlier, connecting with faculty, partnering to understand what the needs were at the time. And, in simple terms, the need was, hey, we need support. We have students in class who present in distress, and we need a place where we can refer them to get them the care that they need. So to me, that was fairly simple. It's just a matter of, okay, so now that we know what we need to do, let's do it. And I was fortunate because I had people on the team who were already at LaGuardia for a number of years. We have counselors who were, 20 years in, so they could also share with me, sort of share their wisdom about, what the culture is, navigating the politics, and again, just really focusing on what the needs were of faculty, and then from faculty getting a sense of what they were seeing in the classroom. So that, it's changed, but at the core of it, it's the same in terms of students that present with anxiety and how that plays out in the classroom behaviorally, students that are maybe struggling with depression and the symptoms might be withdrawing, not being present. So, once we established those partnerships, we focused on how do we connect with students. So we thought about, again, how we can do that. And I'm repeating myself, but meeting students where they are, right? So offering different events. So we offered open houses where we made it engaging, not just tabling, but offering activities like painting, and one year we had a student band come into our office to do like a coffee house hour. Um, just different ways of again engaging with students so that would it would be fun, right? So I think the biggest hurdle when connecting with students is the stigma around getting help and what mental health really means, right? So for a lot of our students, it's what they learn on TV, what they hear from other people about what mental health is, and it's scary. So we try to, destigmatize. Um, yeah.
Yeah, my own experience. I remember trying to get somebody help and finding out a student doesn't have to get help if they don't want to get help. So that was something to find out. Dr. Bassett, what do you do at the center when you're there? What kind of role do you play in the center?
I see students, so I do conduct intakes and individual counseling, but I also assist Frank and another one of our colleagues, Regina, with certain administrative tasks. I'm also the director of our graduate internship program. So right now it's a very busy time for us because we are interviewing students from mental health counseling programs and social work programs for placement at the Wellness Center for the next academic year.
Are any of these folks from the CUNY Graduate Center, or are they coming from other
Yeah.
places?
CUNY Graduate Center, no. CUNY graduate programs, yes.
Right. So we were talking about. I'm forgetting what was the college that broke off from Hunter. Is that the I can't remember now. I just remember the scandal, not the actual name. College of Health and Health Services or something like that. Okay. Uh, Jennifer, you want to talk about the things you do at the center?
Sure. So I'm a counselor and I also lead our outreach and engagement efforts across the campus. Um, and I think that's really, and that's so much, very much, I think, in the spirit of what we're talking about today when we think about community and sort of how we're all working together. I think that's the most important thing when we're working with our students. We're always having an eye toward how are we like really connecting them with their community. So I think just like taking it back to like the very like our beginning intro music with Tribe Called Quest, which I feel like is undeniably some of like the best 90s hip hop music ever made. So, but like thinking of like, I was reflecting this idea of like tribe, right? Like this idea of like a tribe or community, like that's what we're trying to bring for our students, right? Because I think a lot of times what happens when they're going through something, and I think we've all felt this way, if we're going through something, we might feel like I'm alone in that and I'm going through something, whatever it is, and I feel like maybe there's no one else who can understand what I'm going through. And I think that's the thing we know when we think about mental health, the sense of like there can be like really profound isolation when you're going through an experience of mental health or any number of different things. You might feel like I'm the only one that's going through this and no one really knows. And if I tell someone else, I'm kind of really scared to do that because they may not understand what I'm going through. And that is really the heart of our work. And the way we're responding to that is saying, we are going to be with you in whatever you're going through. And so our counselors are not only working with our students and giving them that support, but we're looking at how do we support the whole student? How do we work together with the entire community? And that is really the spirit of this work, is sort of how do we work closely with professors, with other departments, with public safety, with all of the different departments across LaGuardia, and then even thinking beyond that too. Another big piece that all of our counselors do, we humbly realize that we're with them for a very short part of their journey when they're here at LaGuardia. And after they leave, right, how do we make sure that there is that infrastructure of support so that they can be connected to longer term services, to ongoing therapy if they would like that, or other kinds of services. So much of our work is sort of supporting them where they are now, building that community, working within, again, all of the different departments and programs and faculty and staff within LaGuardia, so they're feeling that layer of support, and then building that support outside and beyond LaGuardia so they have that going forward. So that's some of the work I do along with our amazing team. It's sort of like identifying who are some of those other partners so that we can create this tribe and this community that our students can have so that they can be supported.
Listening to you talk, uh, it sounded like, transfer services that would include mental health services. So do you actually, when a student is transitioning to another CUNY, let's say, are you in contact with mental health services and other CUNYs and kind of like setting them up, like as if you're handing somebody off for to the new institution, or is that too much? Frank,
Yeah.
sorry. Oh, Dr. Bassett, it seemed like you wanted to jump in there.
Well, one thing I think is important about therapy and counseling is helping the student to find their niche for autonomy, for lack of a better phrase, right? So it really depends on what they want. A student might finish their time at the wellness center and transfer to a 4-year, let's say, and say, you know what, I think that I've been equipped with the tools that I need to manage. I think I'm okay. And then you have the students who might find that they need that continued support, and they'll ask us, do you know anyone who I can go see? Do you have a referral? I've been in situations where a student mentioned, hey, I'm transferring, and I said, oh, are you interested in continuing? And we'll navigate, the options in the community, but I'll also send them the link for the wellness center or the equivalent thereof at their new institution and give them the option to make the connection themselves. If they want us to be further involved, of course, there's like consent forms and things involved, but we really help the student to be independent. But if they want our assistance, we're willing to do that as well, because we want to make sure that they have that support so that they can continue to be academically successful and otherwise.
All right, Frank, you were trying to jump in there too. All right, is there anything you wanted to add to that? I wanted to go back to this idea of, you say, meeting the students where they are. Are you talking about psychically or physically?
So we don't have psychics at the wellness center. Bad joke. All right.
Well, I don't know.
No,
You come up with the term psychologically. You know.
Yeah, I mean, again, just keeping things simple. It's just the idea of just understanding where, the traditional 18-year-old student is in their own psychological and emotional development, and meeting them where they are at that point in their development. And that plays out in the form of marketing, right? We're careful in terms of how we market our services to someone who's 18 years old, who, we want to appeal to them. So like the days of flyers are good, but, using social media, using video content to engage, using music. We have a Spotify account. So we try to meet them at, in different points to engage them. And going back to what I mentioned earlier is, how do we make the idea of help seeking something that's normal and even something that's courageous, right? That's the key, I think, for me at least. Thinking back to my college days, I wish I would have done more of help seeking when I needed it, because it's difficult to navigate the transition from high school to college, or just navigating college is challenging. We have students who, they're struggling with their financial aid, they're struggling with classes, struggling for food, to have, access to food or meal. So it's multiple things happening in this really difficult stage of their development. So having a lending hand, having someone who's available to listen and be there to help them navigate is, what we try to build into our programming.
Do you offer any group therapy services where people are in group settings talking to each other and sharing? Like Jennifer, you keep talking about this thing that they're not alone, but they feel that way. In group therapy, typically that's an opportunity for people to hear out loud exactly what they're experiencing and realizing, wow, oh, you mean somebody else feels this way? Is that the case? So you want to take that one, Jennifer? You're all so
Yeah.
polite.
Yeah, I can speak to that piece. I mean, we have had different, groups and workshops. I would say particularly like after the pandemic, I did a short-term group around like grief and loss that that we had some students really engage with. However, I would say a challenge that we've noted with students that are so busy managing school and work and family responsibilities, our students are holding so many different things that we found sometimes just logistically, it can be a little bit challenging to navigate. Okay, how do we find that space? And so here's what we found. One of the ways that works really well. There's so many incredible professors at LaGuardia that have been so supportive and great allies to our work. And so we actually get frequent requests from professors to kind of come into the classrooms and give presentations on different things. So it could be any number of different things. We have the signature sort of mental health 101 workshop. We have workshops around stress and anxiety. But what it really is a place to come in and kind of like what Frank was saying, right? Sort of meet the students where they're at. And where they're at is in the classrooms, right? So we'll come into the class and we'll be able to talk about like what's going on and what they're experiencing. Where I always start with those conversations, I always start with a place of like, let's also acknowledge like we have all just been through a pandemic for the last 3 years. And the news just said, like New York One just told us like the pandemic's over. But that doesn't give me any relief because I'm thinking of like the pandemic was like an earthquake, and now we have all of the shock waves that are coming out after that. And it's like when we think of like the mental health crisis and like the escalation of like social anxiety and grief and loss and all of our world getting turned upside down, we're just at the very beginning of trying to reconcile that. And it's impacted everybody in so many different ways. And so what I found is like when we have this space where we kind of come into the classroom and sort of normalize that, right? And this is how we take away the stigma. We can sort of say together in the class, like, let's talk about this. And like, what have we all gone through? And like, and then how do we manage that? What are some different like ways we can deal with our stress and anxiety? And what are you seeing and noticing? And I will tell you, Hugo, every single time when we go into a classroom and have those discussions, there's always these moments where students like they'll look at each other and they're like, okay, someone else has been through that, and someone else, and you just see it, and you see the way they're kind of like responding to each other, and it's like we're giving that space for that conversation. And again, I think this is where we take away the stigma, because it's sort of saying that like whatever you're going through, you're not the only one that's experienced that. And by being able to say it out loud and see that like other students have gone through similar experiences, that's where I think we're getting to a place of transformation.
Okay, we're at the halfway mark here. And the show you're watching is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here at LaGuardia Web Radio. And today my guests are Dr. Shante Bassett, counselor and psychologist, Jennifer Mitchell-Mayer, counselor, and Frank Laterra Bellino, director of LaGuardia's Wellness Center. And the Wellness Center is very busy running programming for Mental Health Awareness Month. So we'd like to start right now talking about the special programming and opportunities for LaGuardia students, staff, and faculty. So why don't we start talking about what you're doing special for Mental Health Awareness Month? Frank?
Well, I'll let my colleague Jennifer speak more to the actual specifics of our events this month, but I'll say that she's done an amazing job, along with the rest of the team, to really highlight the importance of this month. Mental health has always been something that's throughout the years at my time at LaGuardia, but this year in particular, we've done a lot more programming for this month to highlight how important it is to take care of your mental health, especially post-pandemic. As Jennifer mentioned earlier, we're seeing the fallout of this 3-year global event that changed our lives. We're only seeing the start of it, and so we're trying to get ahead of it. And this month really is a starting point for us to really reach out to the community as much as possible to offer a number of programs. So I'll hand it off to Jennifer to speak more about those programs.
Sure. So next week, along with the psychology department, Dr. Sarah Franz, and all of the amazing psychology team, they're going to be hosting their annual 2-day psychology research conference. And so we'll be participating at the beginning with myself, my colleague Saida Gordon, and Andrea Bellissimo. We're going to be doing sort of a mental health panel, connecting with the students who are psychology majors at that event. We've also been able to partner earlier this month with ASAP. ASAP did a host of different activities. They did a whole sort of mental health awareness week, so we were able to kind of partner with them for that. As well as with the academic faculty, there's been a lot of opportunities, as we were talking about before, with kind of connecting and pushing into classrooms and having that space to do mental health trainings and workshops, with students and with faculty. Going back to kind of what we were saying too at the beginning, with our ribbons that we're wearing, like our mental health campaign, like our ribbons and all of our outreach materials. Again, we're trying to kind of have a lot of places where we're really putting up flyers, putting up posters, like making it very visual across the campus. That's really kind of the idea of this campaign. You may have seen some of the posters they're in green that say May Mental Health Awareness Month. They have the ribbon and it says, it's okay to talk about it. And I would say that is absolutely like the spirit of, like, if we could capture all of this in one phrase, right? It's okay to talk about it. We're trying everything we do to kind of take away that stigma. So for all of our students, if they're feeling any kind of way, that they feel comfortable and knowing that it is okay to talk about it, and that they can find someone that they feel comfortable and trust to be able to talk about their mental health campaign. So it's kind of holding both of those things. So it's, like I said, different, the panels, the workshops, different events that we're doing, but it's also kind of this outreach, like awareness campaign with the ribbons, with the posters, kind of really trying to get mental health front and center on people's minds so that students feel like they feel okay and have a space to talk about their own mental health.
Dr. Bassett, is this impacting the work you're doing this month?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I find that anytime any of the staff in the Wellness Center engage in any kind of outreach efforts, we see an influx of student intakes. And I think it's because we're making it accessible. Like Jennifer said, we're meeting the students where they are. And where are they? They're in the classroom, whether it's virtual or in person. So when we do those, make those efforts to go into the classrooms, conduct workshops, trainings, or even if it's just an overview of the services that we offer, more often than not, we receive an influx of intakes. But like Jennifer also said, even though, the end of the pandemic has been declared, there are after effects, there's aftermath. Like, people are still adjusting to the fact that they have to be sitting in class next to someone. So we're seeing a lot of students coming in that still navigating the transition from sitting in front of a computer to sitting in front of an actual professor. You have that. You also have students who are just now trying to figure out how to make sense of what they went through for the last 3 years. So it might not be about returning to campus, but it's just about these emotions, these experiences that they're having now that are unfamiliar to them. There are students who are coming in experiencing symptoms of anxiety, social anxiety, but they don't have a word for it. Like, we have a word for it because it's part of our training, but they're coming to us asking, like, what's going on? Shameless plug, like what's happening with me, and can you help me? So yeah, they're definitely, that's why Frank started off the meeting with saying we're busy, because there are a lot of students who are utilizing our services. It's a good thing because we're here, so we might as well be utilized, but it also speaks to the high level of mental distress that our students and just New Yorkers and people globally are experiencing.
Frank, have you also experienced, we're talking about, with all this outreach work that Jennifer and your team are doing, the impact it's had on the center? Dr. Bassett says obviously there's been an increase in intakes. Have there been other effects to the center from all the work you're doing?
Yeah, we've definitely seen a significant uptick in students having difficulty self-regulating. We get last month we had 3 hospitalizations, which is higher than what we normally see. And we have a lot of faculty who are reaching out, asking for support, because this is all playing out in the classrooms for the most part. And we're seeing students who they're unable to manage their emotions. And again, as everyone has mentioned here, just the multiple things that are occurring in their life, adding on, again, the fallout of the pandemic. So it seems to me that all of the stuff is coming to the surface. It's bubbling up, and we're seeing it play out. And behaviorally, again, we're seeing it in the classroom, we're seeing it in the hallways, in the gym, and so forth. I'm also part of the ESPIC committee at the college, which is a small committee led by our Vice President of Student Affairs. And we gather to look at student cases that have escalated and require some intervention. And we've met more in the last several months than my previous 8 years at the college. So again, it is playing out at a higher rate. And at least on a weekly basis, we have several faculty who reach out concerned about a student in their classroom.
Dr. Bassett, since you also are an adjunct professor, do you experience this in your classroom? Have you had episodes where you felt a student would benefit from the services at the center?
Yes, absolutely. It's dicey because, if you have a relationship with your student, one would hope that you do. They might say, well, can I come talk to you? No, that's a conflict of interest. But I think that when you're a professor and the information is coming from you and you already have a good relationship with your student, it's more likely that they are going to be willing and they're going to follow up on the referral. So absolutely, oftentimes when I start the semester and we tell students about the services that are available, like the writing center and, tutoring in their major, I mentioned the Wellness Center because being a student is tough. We recognize as, employees at LaGuardia that our students, I often say that students bring more than books into the classroom. So, many of them are caretakers for young children and older adults, and they're working multiple jobs and going to school full time, working full time. There's so many different things that our students bring in. They're going to need someone to talk to. And that's how I introduce it, because there's so many different views and stigma about addressing your mental health. Like, oh, if I go see a therapist, that means I'm crazy. No, no, no. You just need you need additional support at this particular time in your life. So go talk to someone about it. So that's how I share at the beginning of the semester. And if something happens throughout the semester and a student is really in distress, I definitely, refer them to one of my colleagues in the Wellness Center.
It's funny because with your talking, I just remembered an episode last week in my class where a student was on their phone during an important period of the class. I had to keep telling him to get off of it. And at some point, they shared why they were doing it. It had something to do with a family member. And, I had to take the phone away. I did a 3 strikes, you're out kind of thing. And then I gave it back. And at the end, I apologized for having to do that. And that gave the student an opportunity to kind of share what they were going through. And I tried to be supportive, but it didn't cross my mind to say, like, you might want to think about going to the Wellness Center. You might be able to get some support around this issue. Am I supposed to be doing that, Jennifer?
Yeah, I think you can. But I also want to validate Hugo. I think you responded exactly the way you needed to respond in that moment, right? And I think what you're bringing up too, something very humbling for all of us, right? I think we all have those moments of reflection. I do myself too, where sometimes I do something and then afterwards I'm like, okay, maybe I could have responded a little bit differently. So, I think your response was fine, and in the future, absolutely. I think for yourself, for all, faculty, professors, I think that's always our, the message that just, we can be allies and partners to you, in a moment if a student's in distress. And I would also say, lifting up that what Frank was saying of if a student's in immediate crisis, in immediate danger, if there's sort of a crisis right there in that moment, we've had many times where a professor will actually walk a student sort of over to the Wellness Center, because a lot of times I think what you have as a professor, right, you have that fantastic trust and relationship with that student, right? They really trust you as their professor. And it's like when they're seeing you, you being able to say, like, you know what, let's come together and I'll bring you together to the wellness center. And like, even again, sometimes physically, like kind of just walking over with them. I think that's like a really powerful message. And so many of our professors serve in that role of like really serving as a bridge to help connect students safely from the classroom to the wellness center. So I think that's just like a powerful role that professors can play.
Yeah, when I introduced the Wellness Center on my syllabus, like Dr. Bassett was saying, one of the lines I use is, you paid for this service. I don't know if that's actually correct, though. I know for other things, so I don't know how the funding works, but I do understand that there's a funding issue around the end of COVID, and that a lot of these services have been pushed in, or the financing that's been pushed in may go away. Uh, do you want to touch on any of that, Frank, or you want to leave that alone?
Not really, but it's not polite to talk about money. No, I mean, yeah, like we're in a budget crisis, right? I think that's across New York City, nationally, I would say. So we're going to lose federal funding next month, which means we'll likely lose some staff. So I've been thinking about this a year out and preparing as best as possible to deal with the possibility of losing staff. President Adams has been great about supporting our area. We've met, and he, wants to do whatever we need to do to continue supporting mental health at LaGuardia. So the support is there, but the reality is that the whole city is in a budget crisis. So we're going to respond accordingly and continue to be there for our students and our faculty and staff.
It's funny because, I'm on the University Faculty Senate. I sit on the Committee of Student Affairs, and we got a report from somebody from Kingsborough about services for students. And there were actually more services for students during the pandemic than there were historically. And obviously, when federal money goes away, so goes the programming. We've moved into the future, that part of the show where we talk about the things we're going to do in the future. And obviously, I could take questions, but I don't know if there is anything. No questions on the stream, even though we've got 8 people watching, which is unusual. We don't usually have a lot of people watching us, in real time. And most of our folks listen to us through the archives. But does anybody want to talk about the future? Dr. Bassett, do you want me to give you permission to talk about the future?
Oh, I'm just being polite. I don't usually need permission. But, to piggyback off what Frank was saying, the funding is going to go away. So there were more, well, I think you said it, Hugo, there were more services available for students during the pandemic. Yes. So that increased accessibility. So we have more students utilizing services. So what happens is that when the money is no longer there, the students are going to still need services. So we're going to have programs, and not just in CUNY, but just mental health professionals as a whole were inundated. So I think what the future looks like is really taking a creative approach to how we manage our own mental health as providers and as faculty and staff, but also how we help our students, because we might not be able to give them unlimited sessions, but we can certainly equip them with the skills necessary to help them manage, maybe expanding our group counseling. And even though that presents its own challenges, that helps us to address the concerns of more students in a shorter amount of time and utilizing fewer resources. So I think those are some of the things that, we have been working on as a staff, trying to figure out how we're going to navigate the summer months going into the new semester. There are a lot of things that are just in a state of flux, but we've been doing it for 3 years, making it work and making it happen with the resources that we have or don't have. And, at the end of the day, just giving our students the best services possible so that they can be the best students and the best humans possible.
Jennifer, did you want to talk about any programming that you're thinking about for the future? For the Wellness Center, as far as services.
Yeah, I think we really covered all of it today, but I think just building off of what Shantae was saying, I love this theme of like, regardless of however funding shapes up, whatever that looks like, the students are here today and they're going to be here tomorrow and they're going to continue to need services. And I think that's always the work, right? It's like, how do we pivot? How do we change? How do we continue to do this? Because the end of the day, I think what I always hold in my mind, like, again, funding comes and goes, things come and go. Like, I've been a social worker for almost 25 years and I've worked in all kinds of different funding streams. And wherever you are, or whatever the funding is, the need is always there. And for me, the question is like, how do we always be creative in responding to that need? Whatever funding is, whatever staffing looks like, whatever other things may or may not be in our control, it's always sort of this idea, how do we continue to be responsive to the needs of the students, to the needs of the faculty? And I think that's, sincerely for me, I think that's one of the things I have been so grateful for at the Wellness Center and under Frank's leadership is just we've been in a pandemic, and just to see the way that the Wellness Center has continued to pivot and change as there's been all of these other changes in the city and across LaGuardia, like we've continued to change and adapt and be responsive. And we're going to continue to do that. And so I think that's the most important thing, that we're going to continue to be adaptive. Whatever the needs are, we will change and adapt ourselves so that we can keep responding to those.
Is there any, do you folks do anything with peers where students support students in their process? Or there's somebody who talked about, I know that our new vice president of student affairs had talked about mentoring, and I don't know whether she's talking about mentoring students or faculty mentoring. I mean, obviously faculty are now being brought into the advising model and they're calling us mentors. I haven't heard from any of my mentees, if that means anything. But again, because like you said, the one thing we always have is students with need. And is there any way to mobilize them to support each other? Kind of like in the models of things like student success mentors, or uh, you know things the Center for Teaching and Learning has put together. I forget what they're called. The folks that show people how to build e-portfolios, or tutors who help each other with their homework, whether it's Student Government Association or the Honors Society. Is there any of that work that can be done, or is that a whole nother ball game?
No, we've done work with different programs, the peer mentoring program, where they have support specialists, so to speak, working with other students. Will, from time to time, train those students to be aware of and mindful of their peers struggling with any mental health related issues. In the past, we've offered mental health first aid training, which is a New York City sponsored training program. So we're planning to launch that program again in the very near future. But yeah, we've worked with various peer programs to get the word out about our services, but to also refer a friend or refer another peer when they see and observe that they're struggling with a mental health issue.
Is this a plausible, Dr. Bassett? This idea of students helping students?
With the appropriate training, absolutely. Because think about it, well, as a parent, my children are probably more inclined to listen to, one of their younger aunts, the people who they think are their friends, before they listen to what their parent says. I'm saying that to say that our students might be more inclined to listen to each other. We have on our intake form the option for students to share how they were referred to the Wellness Center. And many of them were referred by friends. Whether it's a friend outside of the school who said, hey, you need to talk to someone, or it's a classmate. More often than not, it's a classmate. So I think that with the proper training, like mental health first aid, QPR, and other trainings that we offer through the Wellness Center, we can absolutely equip students, maybe not to be psychologists and mental health counselors, but people who have that eye and have the knowledge to kind of see that something might be challenging for one of their classmates, and refer them and point them in the right direction.
All right. I didn't know if you wanted to chime in on this, Jennifer, but I was just going to say we're starting to run out of time, and we save a little time for a little bit more of Frank's music. But I don't I wanted to give you all an opportunity to say anything you wish you had said that you didn't get a chance to say yet, or any folks you want to thank. Uh, possibly who are watching and listening here. There's 8 of them. So Jennifer, I'll let you start since you were the last to speak, or the last person to have a chance to speak.
Sure. I'd like to say first a huge thank you to our students. That's why we're here. I feel like every single one of our LaGuardia students, their grit and determination and resiliency every day, that's what inspires us to do the work. So we wouldn't be here if our students weren't here. I want to say a huge thank you to our director, Frank, who continues to lead the Wellness Center with equanimity and strength throughout all of these different changes and everything that we talked about today. For my amazing colleague, Shantae, just as a colleague, and also, I mean, just to really lift up as the director of the internship program, she's bringing in a new batch of clinicians who are doing this work. And I think that's what we talked about today, right? There's not enough people that are doing this work, and being able to lift up new students that are coming into this field, I think is huge. Our amazing assistant director, Regina, who does just a million different things, and actually brought in our outreach grant that allows us to do so much of the work that we talked about today. Our colleague, Catherine, who does all of our social media outreach marketing efforts. I don't know where we would be without that. And every single one of our colleagues at the Wellness Center, we have a very incredible and dynamic team that I'm really grateful to work with. And I would say beyond that, all the different departments across LaGuardia, we're so appreciative of all the different faculty and staff and programs that we get to collaborate with all the LaGuardia leadership, with Dean Eric Hoffman, with President Adams. We are so grateful and appreciative that they continue to be fantastic allies and supporters of this work. And a huge thank you to you, Hugo. Like, it's amazing just to be on your show and just to have this space today. So thank you.
Dr. Bassett?
I think that Jennifer covered all of the thank
You
yous.
think?
I feel like this is like the Academy Awards. I'm like, please don't start playing the music on her, Hugo. Don't do it. But I'd like to thank Jennifer. Jennifer has really led the charge in the last few months with all of our outreach efforts, whether it's training, organizing, workshops, and things like that. So she's really led the charge and spearhead a lot of our outreach efforts. So you thanked everyone else, but we would be remiss if we didn't thank you for the effort that you put into, and I'm sure that our students are better for the work that you've done. And also thank you to the 8 of you who are tuning in.
Frank?
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying that, we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for the team at the Wellness Center. Jennifer touched on the resiliency of our students, but our team has been resilient, right? I mean, they're doing the work. They're on the front lines. They're engaging with students all day long, hearing people's personal problems, hearing stories that you wouldn't believe are real in a student's life, and being present and available to support them through that. So the team at the Wellness Center is amazing. They do great work. They show up every day, and it's great to work with colleagues who believe in the mission of the Wellness Center and really just they care about students. I've been thinking a lot about. I know we have probably like a minute left. When I started my career, is that right? Is that right? So maybe I won't start a whole new story.
Go ahead.
No, when I started my career in grad school, my first day at Kingsborough Community College as an intern was 9/11. And so I got an opportunity to really be thrown into an experience that really changed my life. But many things stood out for me, but the biggest thing that stood out for me reflecting back is how the counseling center at Kingsborough at that time came together and they put aside their own fears, their own concerns, and really focused on students. And I think the same thing could be said today. Coming out of this pandemic, our staff has really put aside their own concerns, their own fears to be there for our students. So thank you to the Wellness Center staff.
All right. Well, I want to thank the three of you for being on my show today and everybody who watched and listened. And the show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez. And my guests today have been Dr. Shante Bassett, a psychologist and counselor, Jennifer Mitchell-Mayer, counselor, and Frank Latera Bellino, director of LaGuardia's Wellness Center. The Wellness Center is busy running programming for Mental Health Awareness Month, and we've been talking about special programming and opportunities for LaGuardia students, staff, and faculty. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and we're going to go out with a little more music. Thanks to DJ Latera Bellino. Mr. Pope, please take us out.